The Holy Man, Chapter 14, Ego. What do you think he came to see you about? The monks wondered aloud that evening. His egotism, answered Maria, the scientist, laughing. He wanted a stronger ego. They all laughed, but Joe said, "You are right. When he grows stronger in his ego, he will no longer be so egotistical." "Aren't we supposed to abandon our egos?" Maria asked. "Yes. When your ego gets strong enough, you will be able to slough it off." "If I abandoned my ego, what would happen to my science?" "Einstein completely abandoned his ego," said Joe. "Then he was free to think, free to release his intuitive power. He had his devoted assistant to protect him. I think without an ego, you need someone to look after you." "Do you think I need someone to take care of me?" Joe asked. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely," they all said, laughing and pointing to his black eyes and puffed up nose. Chapter 15, Impatient Woman. The long line to the Holy Man, if seen from above by an alien, could be construed to be one organism, for when the top end of it moved, the ripple of movement passed along the entire body. Indeed, each individual felt such a connection to the line, so bonded to the persons at either side of him, that it was almost hard to disband when the word came from the hermitage that the Holy Man had stopped receiving for the day. It was amazing, too, how word traveled like lightning up and down the line. Any little drama that had transpired among pilgrims, any accident or love affair or illumination, it belonged to them all, because they were the line. They were individual pilgrims from all over the world, but they were also one entity, with a strong solidarity. If it was threatened, or seemed threatened, by the occasional troublemaker, crazy person, or desperate person, alarm spread through its body. All pilgrims had to be integrated, but there were those ones who could make the line feel anxious, unhappy, vulnerable to harm, so that the experience of being in the line, which in itself was so healing, could be blighted. At these times the line felt imperiled, so that, if seen from above, it seemed to bristle, squirm, release an ominous cloud into its atmosphere. The impatient woman arrived early in the year when the line was not very long, maybe 200 yards, but it looked long to her. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Why, it's not even moving." "He hasn't begun seeing people yet today," said the man ahead of her. "When he does, it moves pretty fast." "And meanwhile, you just stand here." "That's right." The woman stood a few more minutes, fidgeting. She asked what hours the Holy Man saw people, and the man said it varied, usually between the hours of 9 and 12 in the morning, but sometimes between 1 and 4 in the afternoon. "He only receives us during 3 hours a day? That's terrible. This should be better organized. And look, it's 20 past 9 now, and we might as well be stuck in cement. So it's probably going to be the afternoon hours today, right?" He shrugged. "Well," she announced, "I'm not going to wait around any longer." "It's up to you." She turned and started back down the trail, glad to be doing something, made momentarily stupid by her impatience, deprived of reason by her overriding exasperation. However, she soon realized that the hours it would take her to walk down would be the hours, if she stayed, she'd be moving up in the line, when the line started to move, which could be any minute. Not to mention the fact that, if she departed, she would not see the Holy Man at all. This gave her pause, and she stopped. She fell into an agony of indecision, stepping first forward, then backward, much like the dance of the dappled ponies. Ahead of her, she saw some people coming up the path. If she was not quick to turn, they would take her abandoned place in the line. "Don't bother coming," she called out to them. "The line's too long, and it's not even moving." They disregarded her advice and passed her by. There went her place. "I spent several days getting here," she told herself reasonably. "I should be willing to spend another day waiting. But it's so hard. Getting here, I was in motion. It's the standing around that's so maddeningly difficult. Just standing there with my face hanging out, not doing anything. I didn't bring anything to read or sew. I wonder if anyone has a crossword puzzle book or a pack of cards. Well, there's always charades." She turned and hurried back up the path to the line and took her place behind the 2 people who had passed her. "Change your mind?" "Yes, I'm afraid I'm very restless. It's hard for me to be still." The man kindly taught her how to breathe slowly and deeply from the abdomen, concentrating on a long out breath, letting the in-breath take care of itself. "It will relax you," he said. It wasn't a crossword puzzle, but it was something with which to pass the time. She was a quick learner, a perfectionist, and pretty much excelled at all she undertook to do. But she was one who had never found out that thing to do with her life which would fully occupy her and satisfy her restlessness. This was why she had come to see the holy man. In no time at all, she was a champion deep breather, but this, of course, was not a career choice. The line didn't move much that day. When it broke for the camp making, she went about talking to people with the idea of reorganizing the system. Why not take turns? One day, the men could stand in line. Another day, the women. That way, they'd be free to take walks or go back to town to make phone calls or do anything they wanted. Or why not figure out exactly how many people, at most, the holy man could see in 3 hours and just those people stand in line for that day? Or there could be a watchman assigned to stand at the head of the line and signal when the holy man began to receive the pilgrims so we could all fall into place. Or... They told her that her ideas were impractical, mainly because there were always new people arriving. They pointed out the 3 main rules: no bribing, no saving places, no butting in. They said that, as it was, there were rule breakers and troublemakers. If they tried anything new, it would be anarchy. The line actually worked very well as it was, nor would her ideas move the line along any faster. Her ears pricked up when told of the existence of troublemakers, not considering for a minute that she herself, in a minor way, was well ensconced in that category. She said that she worked in the justice system, which was a lie, and it would be her pleasure to solve any problems that came up in the line and to keep order in general. She was very good at that sort of thing, and it would keep her busy while she waited to see the holy man. She was absolutely longing for something to do. Or, she said, "I'll go mad." She told everyone to please send word up or down the line if she was needed. Not wanting the newcomer to go mad, they kept her busy with any problems that arose in the line. When she went to help, she lost her place and had to begin again at the end because the strict rules applied to her as well. But it was worth it to her to lose her spot if it meant having something to do. In this way, the one who was most impatient to see the holy man never got to see him because she was always going to the end of the line. Day after day, she made absolutely no progress, no headway. If anything, her movement was downward and backward. That was all right for her. She didn't mind because she was busy and useful and needed. It was she who confronted the drunk and tried to straighten out the point man. At first, she would scramble and scurry to where she was summoned, anxious to get to the job. But over time, she began to move slower and to get there just as fast, arriving serene and unruffled, so that her very calmness eased the problem. She met a lot of people and made many friends. She stayed the entire summer. At the end of the summer, there ceased to be new arrivals, and the line grew shorter every day. It looked like she was going to get to see the holy man at last, but she decided she would rather come back to see him next year when there would be a whole new line to need her managing and counseling abilities. Meanwhile, she would seek out other kinds of lines. She had found her career in life, line master. Sometimes, in her secret heart of hearts, she called herself Peacemaker. Chapter 16. Rivals. There was one woman in the line who was so intent on getting to the holy man that she could not think of anything else. She paid no attention to the other pilgrims, but only concentrated on the movement upwards, as if by an exercise of will she would get there quicker. When the line broke for the day, she went off alone, as if talking to others would only distract her from her mission and maybe abort it. She was eager to look over any newcomers, however, just as she'd been concerned upon arriving to study the people who were ahead of her. Her name was Marion. Because she came early in the year, she was able to reach the hermitage door in only 6 days. When Joe told her who he was as he was ushering her out, her eyes glittered with victory. I did it, she thought, and couldn't wait to get back home to tell her friend. This look of aha did not escape the holy man. Did you want to ask me something? Not really. No, I just wanted to see you. That's what I thought. Let me ask you something then. What is the opposite of love? Hate, of course. No, it is envy. His words did not particularly sink in. She was in too much of a rush to get home and had a long way to go. She only thought, glancingly, don't talk to me about envy. I am not envious. It is Winnie who is so envious. Envy indeed. Marian and her friend Winnie had been rivals since girlhood. It began by being a normal, friendly rivalry, who had the cutest boyfriend, the prettiest dress. Then it evolved to who could marry the richest man, and, that accomplished, have the biggest house, the finest car. But anyone could buy things. The rivalry refined itself to which of them could have the most interesting guest to dinner. That kept them busy for years. Because they were provincial women, they weren't playing in the big leagues, so neither one's dinner table was ever graced by a person of international or even national eminence. But Winnie got a state senator once, and Marian a college president. Down through the years, it was always who could have the most wonderful vacation at the most glamorous resort, which evolved in time to who could discover the most out-of-the-way vacation, and finally evolved, or disintegrated, into who could have the most demanding, strenuous, and wretchedly miserable vacation, such as running a marathon or river, crossing deserts, and polar ice caps. Over the years, nobody won, although there were fleeting triumphs. Then Marian heard about the holy man. By now, both women were widows and heading toward old age. She prayed with all her heart that Winnie didn't know about him yet, or if she did, it hadn't entered her mind to try and see him. This would be a real coup. This would be the creme de la creme of accomplishments. Winnie would be green with envy, would be utterly defeated once and for all. Marian made her plans in secret, and took off for the faraway town at the foot of the mountain. Her quest was successful, except for those rankling words the holy man had bestowed upon her in parting. When she got home, she did not at once tell Winnie where she had been. She was waiting for the perfect moment when poor Winnie would throw up some piddling triumph to her, and she could forthwith crush her with her paramount deed of having climbed the mountain to see the holy man. She waited in vain, because Winnie was no longer acting spiteful and jealous, no longer seeking to impress. She was actually being quite nice. Marian began to suspect that Winnie too had seen the holy man, and that she too was waiting for the perfect moment to annihilate her with the news. Or else Winnie had seen the holy man and changed thereby, had gotten some message from him, maybe the same message, maybe a different one, and become the lovely person that she seemed to be now. Well, Marian would show her. She was going to be an even nicer person. She went out and did good works and made a name for herself as a charitable woman. She was a familiar at all fundraisers, soup kitchens, settlement houses, and rehabilitation centers. She made sure her picture got in the paper so that Winnie would know. Then she found out Winnie was also doing good works, only quietly. There was only one thing left. Marian decided to sell everything she owned and give it all to the poor. This took some while, and in the meantime, Winnie disappeared. She was probably gone to India to work with Mother Teresa, Marian thought crossly. Well, good riddance to her. I'm still giving all my money to the poor. What do I want with this big old house anyway? Deep down in her heart, however, she felt very sad to think that she might have lost her old friend, that she might never see her again. But Marian found Winnie living at the same boarding house she moved into. She told her how happy she was to find her, that she had missed her, and that she loved her. I love you too, Winnie said. Isn't it wonderful not to live with envy anymore, but instead to feel love with each other? Aha! Just as I suspected, Marian thought. And it was on the tip of her tongue to say, I saw the holy man too, you know. But she didn't, because what if, by some slim chance, she was wrong, and Winnie never had gone to see him? It would crush her.